Hello, I'm Berl Schwartz from City Pulse. You might remember that last November, the day after local elections, we did an interview with the mayor-elect after his astonishing victory, where he got almost 80% of the vote. And after we did that interview, he suggested that perhaps we should get together regularly once he got into office. Well, we took him at his word. We got together with message makers at in Old Town, and the result is the first in what we hope will be a series of interviews with the new mayor of Lansing, Andy Schor.
Thanks for having me, Berl. I'm always excited to do these. I love doing these, so always great to be talking to the public, talking to City Pulse.
Well, thank you very much. And Andy, if this doesn't work out, you could probably do traffic reports from a helicopter. You looked very comfortable.
It was a new experience. I've been up in a helicopter once before, but it was great to be up and to see. We did it for your viewers. We did it for the flooding. And it was great to go up in the air and really to see where the water was pooling, how high it was, how fast it was moving, the debris, the people who were kayaking and about to hit a corner and be worried about them. So the state police took us up, and it was great for them to do that. It was tremendously helpful as we navigated the
Yeah,
the
what
flooding.
did it help you with?
It helped us to see all that from the sky. Instead of having to drive site to site and missing sites, it let us see where is the water collecting. We took a boatload of pictures. We put them on a memory stick. We will use that when we submit to the governor and to FEMA for damage aid. So it really provided a whole lot of resources that we wouldn't have had otherwise.
And this now, fortunately, the waters have receded, but that's not the end of this, is it?
No, it's not. No, we have to do damage assessment. We still have volunteers out talking to neighbors, finding out what problems they're having. We have to have a record of everything that we've spent, everything that there's damage, so we can submit that to the state. Hopefully the governor will issue an emergency for the state. It's not just us, it's several other communities that have gone through this, and then that would go to the president and to FEMA to bring back some dollars to help us clean up.
This, I guess, is probably a pretty good example of how different this job is from what you did in the past as a county commissioner and as a legislator.
It's very, very different. Now, I'll lead off with the city has tremendous emergency operations staff. We have tremendous staff in my office and throughout the city. As soon as this happened proactively, as soon as the rain stopped, we all got together and said the rivers are going to rise. Our emergency operations folks were great. Valerie in my office got all the PR stuff out. We had operations and maintenance, so we had the pothole crews ready to go. We had just everybody did their part. So really for me, it was just being there to make some decisions. Should we barricade 127 in Kalamazoo? Should we not? And I made the decision with the information brought to me that we should. In the legislature, you debate policy, although you do help people. You debate policy, and at the county commission, it's the same thing. You debate kind of policy, but there's not one person kind of leading that effort. And as mayor, the citizens look to me. People, when they hit potholes, they call my office, and when they have water coming in their house, they call my office. And I believe we were ready. I can't say we solve everybody's problems. I'm not going to be able to go in personally and dry out everyone's basements, but I think we saved a few hundred houses in Urbandale by putting up that blockade, and I think that by getting the evacuation notice out to folks early, we helped out some people. So,
is the biggest difference between what you were doing in your career and this that you're making decisions every day?
Yes. Yep. You get to drive policy. You get to drive an agenda. You get to drive what's best for the city. As a legislator, you're one of 110, especially in the minority. A lot of times you're reacting. As a county commissioner, I was one of 16. This is a case where I work with city council, so I'm one who works with 8 for policy issues, but the day-to-day, talking about getting people out to check code issues or whatever the issue might be, working on our parks. I'm looking at contracts and signing them. I am directing our staff on where to go and what to use with our limited resources. It's very different, but I enjoy it. I enjoy being able to do that and have the confidence of the citizens.
What's the process like? We know with Mayor Bernero, he had a couple of really strong people at the top, and the sense was that most things went through them and were presented to the mayor. Are you dealing directly with department heads? How's it working for you?
I do deal directly with department heads. Now, Samantha Harkins is my chief of staff. And she and I have most of the direct involvement with all of our department heads, who then have involvement with all of their supervisors and staff. But I'm very hands-on. We have a cabinet meeting every Monday, just like Mayor Bonero did, but I talk to my department heads regularly. I have a lot of people that want to meet with me, but I spend a lot of time with each department head talking about what's going on in their department. They will ask me for decisions on a variety of things, and I'll make them. But Samantha also does a tremendous amount of work with our department heads, checking in with them. What does the mayor need to know so she can brief me? And together, we talk a lot. Marilyn on my staff, Marilyn Plummer, she talks to me a lot about things going on in the community. Chelsea Coffey on my staff, she does a tremendous amount of work. She's our special assistant. She's kind of our jack of all trades. Jen in my office does a lot with the schedule and with the office administration. Bishop Maxwell has been tremendous with the faith-based community. Martha Fujita, who I'm getting to know, she really knows more about protocol and a whole variety of different issues. So everyone kind of plays that role. As I mentioned, Valerie Marchand, who does all of our media relations. Everybody plays a role, and we all talk. We have a staff meeting. We discuss things. There are some times when I believe one thing and they convince me otherwise. When we were looking at information on early in the flooding, several of my staff convinced me we should put stuff out early, and I said, okay, let's do that. For me, the thought is, let's go, but Valerie is always first to say, don't forget, we need to put out a media advisory, we need to put out a press release, we need to get you in front of Berl Schwartz and Todd Haywood. We need to make sure that we're telling the public. So that's why I have my staff, and they're a great staff.
And as you mentioned, the other component is working with City Council on policy. Have you set up regular meetings with them?
Yep, we have. I've met with the City Council President, with Carol Wood. We've met several times. Just she calls or texts me and says, hey, we need to meet, or I text her and we say, hey, we need to meet. We've done that a few times. I've gone to her office on 10. She's come to my office on 9. But we did set monthly brown bag meetings with council. It's what Mayor Hollister used to do, and we had our first one. Now, we actually have 2 council members. The brown bag is like a lunch with council. We have 2 council members who couldn't make it because they work, so we did something separately with them, trying to find the right time. Maybe it's later in the afternoon where they can all be there with me together. We publicly notice it because we are talking about issues, so there's a quorum potentially. And yeah, we discussed, I brought to them several of the issues that you and I are going to talk about, and they brought to me a few issues, and it was a good back and forth.
Very good. Well, and let's talk about some issues. Sure. In your State of the City speech, you covered a lot of ground.
I did.
And one of the things I wondered about, oops, put up my glasses, excuse me, is the partnership you emphasize with the Lansing School District. And I'm just wondering what it is you think the city can do that would benefit the school district.
Well, it goes both ways. The school district is an important part of the city. People decide where they're going to live sometimes based on the schools. I think that Lansing Schools does a tremendous job. My kids are both in the school district. I think children can go to the Lansing Schools and excel and come out and be, very productive citizens, go to college, whatever they want to do, a trade. And I think that the reputation of the school district doesn't match the reality. So they're doing a lot of work, and I said this in my campaign, I said this on your show, we can talk about everything that's going on in the Lansing schools, and I'm learning things every day. So we will work with the superintendent. We're going to designate someone who will go to school board meetings, who will be a direct relationship with the school district, so we can spread the message that the school district isn't what it was 15 years ago. We have pathways. We know we have specific programs. We have the only Chinese immersion, in the region. We have a STEAM program. We have a STEM program. We have all of these incredible programs. My son is in the New Tech program. My daughter does Chinese. These are things that are assets that people just don't know about. So we have to spread the word. And it's on the city to do that as well. We're selfish, right? We don't want people to leave the city. We want them to stay here. We want them to love this city, and part of that is the school district. So operating in silos and saying we're doing our thing and they're doing their thing, it doesn't work. You have to work together. So we will partner with the school district on a variety of things. I will continue to champion the Lansing Promise and other pieces that are along with the schools, but I will champion the schools and talk about the great education we can get, that any of our children can get there.
We're in the midst of yet again another national debate on gun control and schools. And what is the role there for the city of Lansing?
Well, unfortunately, in Michigan, local governments, cities, are completely preempted from doing anything with guns. So we can't say no guns allowed in schools. I have concerns when people have guns in schools, and I've made that clear. When I was in the legislature, I sponsored a bill that would close the open carry loophole. Right now, anybody can walk into a school openly carrying a gun, although now it's debatable, but that's pretty much what the law says. So I have concerns about that. I have concerns about a lot of things when it comes to guns in schools. I have concerns about whether we want to arm teachers or whether teachers should just lock the doors and get the kids out. Do you want more bullets flying, people shooting at shooters, things like that? That's my personal opinion. In terms of the role of the city, we are not allowed to have a role because the state doesn't allow us to.
But couldn't you have a role through the police department?
Well, we do. We contract with the schools, and we have school resource officers in the high schools. So we do. The school has requested that, and I am supportive of that. I had people who disagree with me on the campaign, and that's the process. But I do believe that when you have someone with a badge who is walking around as a police officer, kids see that as a position of authority. They don't see a gun, they see a police officer. They see as someone who is keeping them safe, and I'm supportive of that.
Do you have a sense of how safe our schools are?
I think they're pretty safe. I have not seen any issues with my kids. Now, we're in an urban area, and anytime something comes up, the schools, they react pretty quickly. If there's any, shooting in the area or any gun or anything, they lock down. They make sure the kids are safe first and foremost. But I believe that our kids are just as safe as the kids are in East Lansing or Hazlitt or Waverly. I think we have the same amount of safety as anywhere else. Now, anything can happen anywhere. We saw it in Florida. This was a wealthy district. They thought their kids were completely safe, and then there's a tragedy, a massacre. And it can happen anywhere. But I do believe that our kids are safe.
Now, putting aside that kind of tragedy, you said that the schools have a reputation that isn't really a reality today. Be more specific. What are you talking about?
I heard, when I knocked on doors, and I heard people who said that their kids went there 15 years ago, and they gave me all different kinds of stories about inappropriate behavior, stories about test scores. Now, we are lower than I'd like on test scores, but we also serve a much greater population. We serve immigrants that come in from other countries who come in immediately, and they are learning the language and still taking the test scores. We're welcoming, and that can hurt our test scores. But people see that as a failure, and I don't. And I think that years ago that there were issues in the Lansing schools. We went from a lot of kids to less kids to less kids, and now we're building back up again. So I wasn't here 15 years ago. For me, it's just the stories I heard on doors, but people's perception is what they knew years ago, and I think it's very different now.
Another national debate is what to do about the opioid crisis, which you addressed to some extent in your State of the City speech. Tell us what the city is trying to do.
Well, the city is getting involved nationally. The city, before I came into office, the city was put into a lawsuit where they are suing the drug manufacturers and others. Everybody's got a role in the spread of opioids. Right now, pretty much anyone can get them. It's very easy. There are no limits. It's very similar to the kind of the tobacco settlement that was made years ago. So the city is involved in that effort. I'm supportive of that. I want to make sure that those who are over marketing these drugs without talking about the negative have some responsibility. But we need help. We've got police officers, we've got firemen who carry Narcan, which is the drug that you give to combat overdoses, and they're giving 2-3 doses at a time. We're seeing hundreds and hundreds of doses. We're saving lives, but it's costly. It is costly for the city for any city to spend that much money. So it would be nice to see some reimbursement for a lot of those costs. There's also a social cost. We are seeing kids who are affected and dying. We're seeing people affected and dying based on, in essence, a prescription. So, and you see it everywhere. It's not just Lansing. You see it in wealthy communities. You see it kids who are playing sports and they get injured, and then they get, the 30-day drug that will make them feel better, and they get 2 refills, and then after 90 days they're hooked, but they can't get it anymore, so they move to heroin because it's cheap and accessible anywhere. We heard that story time and again. I was in the legislature, and we worked on these bills that I was a sponsor of, and we saw that time and again. So we're seeing that in Lansing. There's a real cost to the city, there's a real cost to society when you have this kind of an epidemic.
One of the more interesting ideas was presented in an editorial over the weekend by the New York Times. And they extol the idea of letting cities open safe injection sites, which I'm sure would be no small controversy. But they say at safe injection sites, trained staffs provide clean needles, administer naloxone when there are overdoses, and offer long-term treatment options. People bring their own drugs, most often heroin. Despite millions of injections that have occurred at more than 90 facilities internationally over the past 3 decades, not a single overdose death has been recorded.
I didn't see that.
It's, you're welcome to have it.
I will take it. I get the New York Times. I get it online.
Yeah.
I'll hold on to this stuff.
Yeah, because, I wonder if it's really going to take some thinking outside the box.
And it could. We do have needle exchange programs here, which I'm supportive of. Todd Haywood was on the county task force that helped to bring that to Ingham County, and I'm supportive of that. Do we want people using drugs? No. Do we want them on heroin? No, of course not. But there's a treatment component outside of just an enforcement component, and if you can make sure that people are doing it clean, with clean needles, while still trying to wean them off the drug, while still encouraging them to get treatment, well, that's a win. That's a win. And so I'm open to a variety of options. I'm open to having that conversation and discussion, because right now we're seeing far too many overdoses, far too many deaths as opposed to this, or as part of this epidemic.
On a whole different level of drugs, we're in the midst now of the application, the process for medical marijuana facilities of all sorts, dispensaries and grow operations, and there's a sense that you really are not a proponent of the medical marijuana, which Mayor Brunero embraced, and I'm sure embraced it in part because he saw a pretty good revenue opportunity for the city from taxes. And so I'd like to find out what you are thinking, especially now that you're looking at, you got to deal with the budget.
Yeah, well, right now we're enforcing the ordinance that is on the books, and the ordinance on the books says that people can apply for any of the 5 licenses. If they want a dispensary, it's capped at 25. So we had many apply, and 20 of them will be awarded licenses in the first round. The city clerk has taken them, is scoring the applications. So 20 of the 70 or 80 that applied will get licenses. We will see revenues from that, and the revenues that I see from that will go towards enforcement and inspection. And we did have to send closure notices. Those who applied, those who are operating but didn't apply, we sent closure notices. Now again, this was all under Mayor Bonero. The ordinance was passed, even the closure notification was passed. I am someone who believes that we will enforce the law. So if there are 20 and then another 5, anybody operating without a license, we will enforce and give them notice, tell them that you're operating illegally, we'll fine them, and then we'll close them. Those that are operating legally, I'm fully supportive of. I've got a friend who's got lupus, and she uses medical marijuana out in Colorado, and when she would be on opioids, right, they had a really negative effect, but when it comes to marijuana, she uses it and it helps her lupus. I am supportive of medical marijuana as a tool that we can use right now that's legal in Michigan, and we'll see how it goes. But our council last year passed this ordinance. They said 20 to 25, first 20 and then another 5. Our grow operations, I'm supportive of that. I'm sympathetic to the argument that we can't have every industrial building be a grow because we need to have space for other industries as well. I do believe there is a balance, but right now we have 30 maybe or so that applied, 39 I think, that applied for grow operation licenses. And again, those are all being evaluated. So I'm going to enforce the ordinances on the books.
All right. Arts and culture, and thank you for the shout out at your State of the City talk when you...
Worst kept secret in Lansing.
Yes, you said we'll be establishing a Blue Ribbon Commission on Arts and Culture, which thanks to City Pulse was the worst kept secret in Lansing. I know there's been a flood, and I'm sure many other things that may take priority, but give us a progress report.
We're updating it's all process, right? So we're going to update the application for city boards and commissions. We're going to add this arts commission. We're going to put out some kind of a media release letting folks know that we're taking applications for this. And then we will take applications and set the committee, the Blue Ribbon Committee, and then let them go. Now, I've probably had 20 or 30 people who've already let me know they want to serve. I believe you included.
Yes.
That want to serve, and that's awesome. I mean, we have, I said it in my speech, we have such artists and performing arts folks, and our art and culture is tremendous. So I want to set that. We have to have the right people, have the right balance. Now, I'm always very interested in showcasing the talent of Lansing. So I would like to have Lansing residents as much as we can. That being said, we will have some non-Lansing residents because we have businesses. We have the Lansing Symphony Orchestra. We have the Arts Council. We have folks who are doing it here in Lansing who may not live here. I'd like to see people who live here first and foremost, but I'd like to see those that improve the culture of Lansing. So we'll have a balance. And we've got just the talent that people are sending me is incredible. You know, you have a choreographer who worked with Michael Jackson and worked with, you know, a variety of different singers and things, who's here in Lansing, who I'm going to meet with, who wants to be on it. So let's put him on.
But of course, and it's great to extol the arts. But what do you see as the end result of this?
I see a variety of things, and it's not just what I see, because I think there's going to be a lot of things that come out of this that I don't see. You know, I think conversations about how we showcase our arts. Can we get a performing arts space here in Lansing? You know, I'm not looking to recreate Wharton, but we probably could bring the Lansing Symphony Orchestra back to Lansing and have them do some performances here. We can have other performing arts space. We can do more with showcasing our galleries and things like that. We can do more, having more jazz concerts and things. We actually have a lot of that, but we can do more. So how do we do that? How do we get these people together to talk about what more we can do, how we create that infrastructure, how we pay for it? You know, the city of Lansing can't afford to pay for all these things, but we have a lot of private donors who are interested in the arts who would put money into a combined effort. So let's take all those pieces and put them together. And maybe there are a whole variety of things that I am not thinking of that those who have the artistic talent are thinking of and want to put on the table.
And I will mention I ran into Dennis Swan, the head of Sparrow, at an event recently, and suggested to him, what about the Sparrow Performing Arts Center at Eastern High School? And, you know, he looked kind of interested.
Yep. We talked about, he and I met, we talked about a variety of things. They don't have anything set for Eastern, so I think they're open to a variety of ideas.
Great. Very good. The riverfront, you were excited to announce a partnership with the Capital Region Community Foundation. What is that about, and how's that going?
It's going really well. They have kind of taken this on as they want to. This is all about placemaking, right? You want to have great art, you know, for a community, for talent. You want to have all of the, you know, the great tools, but our riverfront, it needs some help right now. I mean, in my ideal world, we have San Antonio-style businesses on the river with with a walk. We're not there yet, but they've got different donors that want to contribute to a whole variety of different things they want to do on the river in the downtown area. So basically, from the Cherry Hill neighborhood all the way north, past the Shiawassee Bridge, on both sides of the river, they're working with I-5. They want to create an outdoor classroom. We want to do these fireplaces and these hidden forests and things like that. They've got these great ideas. They've got the mock-up, which you can see, and they've got different donors who want to all donate money to each piece of that. You know, there are things like naming rights, and there's a park area that someone's going to probably name and give a whole bunch of money for. It's going to revitalize our riverfront, which I think would be a tremendous asset to our community. It's somewhere for people to go and spend time, when they're having lunch, when they want to stay after work, when they want to come on the weekend. This is one of those third spaces. It's not your home, it's not your work, it's your third space. Where do you go to recreate? And I think that the work they're going to do there is going to be impressive.
As someone who lost his annual tire to a pothole recently, I want to talk to you about infrastructure. You said during the campaign, and you reiterated in your State of the City talk, that you're going to be going to meet with neighborhood leaders. But what are you really going to learn that the city doesn't already know, that we've got streets that really are in trouble?
The city knows, we know through our PACER rating maps, and we know which roads are bad, which roads are okay, and which roads are good. Many more that are bad, some that are okay, very few that are good. So we know kind of as a whole. Going neighborhood to neighborhood, when I talked to people in the campaign, they, for the most part, knew we're not going to fix every street in a year, in 2 years, in 3 years. We're going to have a priority list. We're going to have a plan. So if you live on the south side, is your priority, your street on Lowcroft, or is your priority Kavanaugh, because that's where you drive to get out? Is the priority the main streets, Pennsylvania? Is the priority the downtown? I had people on the east side and the west side say, you should go fix the downtown first, because that's where it's our biggest commercial corridor. So I think for me, it's a matter of going in, talking to people about what's your priority. Is it your road? Here is the money we have. We have about $5 million that we get every year, and we need about $25 million just to keep the roads the way they are. So we have very limited money, and we have to target it towards the roads, and that comes from the gas tax. This is the law. This is what the state has passed. We get it from the gas tax. We get it from the registration fee, and we're going to do 2 or 3 big reconstruction projects. But outside of that, it'll be fixing potholes and patching, some asphalt overlays. It's Band-Aid solutions so that the streets are passable. But going neighborhood to neighborhood pretty much tells us what's the priority within that neighborhood.
But of course, we need potholes fixed now,
and we are,
especially right now.
And we are. They are on since Wednesday or Thursday. It's been since we declared the emergency. They are on full shifts, and they're doing pothole repair. When you get a freeze and a thaw like we did, you remember the snow and all the plowing questions. Well, it immediately thawed, and then we got a lot of rain. We had 3.5, 4 inches of rain, and all that snow melted. Freeze and thaw and water does a number on roads, and our pothole crews are out there continually. We've had several crews on. We had them throughout the weekend. I think we had 6 crews on throughout the weekend. We have employees working 16 hours a day and then getting 8 hours off. I mean, we're working hard to fix the potholes just like every other community. It's not just Lansing. Everybody's seeing it. I heard complaints about East Lansing. I heard complaints about Lansing Township. I heard complaints about Delta Township. Everybody's facing it.
Of course.
Yeah.
But so practically speaking, you're going to talk to people, but meanwhile, you've got to keep doing what you're doing. How long will it take to find out what Lansing wants? And then, are we really talking about something in the immediate future?
We're talking about looking at the dollars that we have and adjusting them as there's a priority need. And it's not Lansing as a whole, it's Lansing neighborhood by neighborhood. People on the southwest side may want different things in the southeast side, different than the east side, different than the west side. It is different neighborhood by neighborhood, which is why we're doing it neighborhood by neighborhood. We've got 4 or 5 of these already planned. Although the first one, which I announced at the State of the City, we are, I think, going to postpone due to the flood. We weren't able to really get the word out. So I think we're going to postpone the first and then try and reschedule. We're actually in those conversations now. But it's important to me to talk to the people, to hear from the people, and to adjust our dollars as appropriate. And we know we have a lot of bad roads. Which ones of those lot of bad roads get fixed and when? And that's really the question.
And how you arrive at that answer without angering people, I don't know.
Yeah, we're going to take all the information and then try and adjust and then share. Yeah. People really wanted to hear. They wanted to know. First, they wanted to know what were our money in the past being used for, and we're going to show people that, and then we're going to say this is our list. This is what we're planning to repair. We're still going to repair based on complaints. There will be new potholes and things, but we're going to put out our priorities while still trying to address the newer problems that arise as they arise. It's complicated, but we're trying to do it as part of a citizen, as listening to the voters and the citizens and the residents.
You spoke about the long-term deficit the city of Lansing faces and new instructions to the mayor's financial health team. First of all, does that continue to be headed by David Hollister?
It will. It will. He has agreed to continue to lead that.
And so you're asking them for recommendations. They've of course given recommendations before, but one of the recommendations or at least that David Hollister said, was we got to consider selling BWL. I know I've asked you about this before, and you have said that's not really a place you're likely to go. What if they say again, we've got to look at that, we need that money?
They might. They might. It's a community conversation. That's not just a 30-person financial health team conversation. It's a community conversation.
But isn't it one that needs to be had? I mean, Mayor Bernero brought it up, but didn't really do anything about it in those last 2 years in terms of making it a conversation.
I think it has been had, and I think it will continue to be had. What's the support of the Board of Water and Light within the city of Lansing? I think there's tremendous support from what I've seen, from the people that I talk to. I think that people are supportive of having a local, citizen-owned municipal utility. This is something that I can't do by fiat. This is something that the council would have to pass to put on the ballot and the voters have to support, and I do not believe the support is there. Plus, I like having a municipal utility here in Lansing. I don't think that's the long-term answer. I think that we have to look at many, many options. Will that be on the table? Maybe. It might be. I just don't think that that's a realistic option for us to look at starting to solve this problem now. And that's what I asked from the financial health team. I asked for recommendations for solutions within the next 6 months, and then more going forward. But we've got a lot of issues we have to navigate. And the original report they came out with in 2006 when they started, we are going to refresh that report, and we're going to utilize the information that was presented to the mayor last year. And I sat in on that from the Siegel report, and they put a variety of things on the table. So I'm asking for our folks, and I beefed up the financial health team a little bit. I added more experts. I added some folks from the different unions who will represent employees and some folks who are retirees. I added some CPAs. I added kind of some numbers people. So I'm going to let them kind of work that through a little bit. We're looking internally at our office, or the things that we can do outside of a collective bargaining process. So we're going to look at that and start coming out with some ideas, some recommendations, and we may start making some changes. It all has to happen fairly soon. I mean, it's not like a year from now we go bankrupt. We're not there. We're paying our average, our ARC, our annual required contribution with our pensions, and so we're in good shape. It's just a matter of trying to right size for the future. But another part of that is growth. The more growth we do, the more revenues we have to come in the future, the more we can pay off what our obligations are. So we're going to put all of that into the mix, but I'd like to get some recommendations pretty quickly.
Would growth and unions be the main way to solve this problem?
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know what the main way is. I think that all the options have to be put on the table. We have to, if there were going to be contract discussions, then the unions have to be part of that because we negotiate with them. Growth is always part of a city's future and whatever the revenues are that are going to come in. So those are two big parts of it. But there are a lot of issues on the table. There's, it's not just, we don't need to go in and cut benefits, but there could be the way we provide benefits that can save money. So we need to look at anything that can save dollars going forward. We're building our workforce back up to where it was before the Great Recession. We have a lot of contract employees, many that we can bring online as full-time, so that way they're paying into the pension system. Again, it would help to stabilize that system, but still would have more cost in the future. So we're going to balance all of those pieces.
Two things I want to talk to you about before we go. One is the new City Hall, and the other is the Red Cedar project. So you have asked the four developers who proposed a plan for both the old and new City Hall to provide more information on a new City Hall. What was lacking in what they provided in the first place?
What we saw with a lot of the original proposals were what should be done with the current building. And we saw 4 very good proposals. The one that was unanimously chosen by the external and internal committees last year was the Whither project for the current City Hall, and I'm supportive of that.
And that's the one that would keep the current City Hall converted to a
Correct.
hotel.
Correct. Right. It would use the same structure and the police station, convert them into a hotel, adding on a little bit with a restaurant at the top, glassed in. Correct. That's the proposal that that Mayor Bonero's folks decided was the best through their scoring system, and I think we stick with that. We did not see as much detail necessarily on the back end of where City Hall should move, what we can do with the police station. I wanted more detail on that. We saw a proposal that came with the Whither project for City Hall and then the State Journal building, but a lot of questions have been raised. What does that look like? And we didn't see it. And Mayor Bonero, he had said the community can build that, can take the canvas and build their own building from that. And that was an option, and I supported that last year. But I'd like to see proposals on what would City Hall look like? What are the space needs that we have, and how does that get put in there? Are the police part of that? Are they not? The other major issues are the courts and the lockup, and we are having conversations with the county to see, is there a way that we can work together to join our lockups together? Can we join the courts together? So we need to have all of those conversations before I believe we're ready to move forward with an actual proposal. So we're taking the ball and kind of trying to run with it from where the former administration left off, and we'll see what we can get done.
Is it clear at this point that the courts and the lockup would have to go in a separate facility, or is that still a possibility of the courts and the lockup being in City Hall?
I would say it's still a possibility, probably less so though, because to build a whole new lockup, depending on where we go. What's the infrastructure available for a lockup, which is expensive? What's the infrastructure available for courts? You really want to have them in the same place. You don't want to transport prisoners from a court across town to a lockup. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You pay a lot in transport costs. So I think the lockup is probably a bigger concern. Do you put a lockup under in any of the proposals? I think I'd rather see it combined with the county or in a separate space, but honestly, a lot of it deals with the numbers. We have to be able to pay for this. Mm-hmm. And whatever project that we can utilize, which is a 50-year decision for the city that we can pay for, is my preference. If there's a way that we can capture dollars to pay for this without putting future general fund revenues on the hook, that's my preference. So we'll see what the proposals come in.
My sense of things from the county commissioners was that the lockup was not going to be in the city of Lansing.
The jail. So now there's a difference between the jail and the lockup. The county jail is going to stay in Mason. The county does have a lockup under the Veterans Memorial Building. It's a temporary lockup where prisoners, when they go to circuit court, they get housed in the lockup under the Veterans Memorial Building. The jail is a whole different story. That's your more permanent physical space. That is not coming to Lansing. The county commission is talking about how to raise money to replace their jail, which is in very bad shape. The temporary lockup at the county building is just very different than the jail. And I hear that a lot. I hear a lot of people who say, but I thought that the jail's not moving. It's not. But we can have conversations with the existing county lockup. What improvements are needed there? Do they close that? We go somewhere else. We have a new lockup and court system. We can have those conversations.
Mayor Bonero, of course, advocated having the jail in Lansing. Is that simply a political non-starter or practical non-starter? Why not? I mean, isn't that where most of the population that's in the jail is coming from?
Well, practically, my understanding is it would be almost double the cost for the county. So that's a problem. Practically also, I don't know that I want a full jail in our downtown. If you look over kind of closer to where the county building is, it's not really in the heart of the downtown. But there I would have questions about the impact of having a full county jail in the downtown as opposed to a 3-day lockup where people are just going to court and back. But there would be a cost savings. There'd be a cost savings to the city because our cops have to bring prisoners down to the jail. Mm-hmm. When they're found guilty, they have to bring them down to the jail. So there is a cost savings. But
There also would be a convenience for relatives of people jailed there that Mason is certainly hard to get to.
it's on the bus line. The jail is on the bus line. So people who don't have the ability to get in a car and visit, it is on the bus line. So as long as it continues to be accessible in Mason, then I think that addresses the relatives problem. You know, there are positives and negatives, but at this point, it's kind of a moot point because the county has said it's too expensive, so I'm not focused on it.
As far as the LSJ building goes, should we infer anything from you asking so that the Ides shouldn't be nervous? This is still in the running.
It's still in the running, yeah. And they weren't, you know, it wasn't one of the 3 initial proposals, but it was something that Beitler had mentioned as one of the options in his proposal. So it's still in the running. It's a matter of, again, what it would take to, what the cost would be, what the layout would be. I want parking for our residents. You know, right now someone comes to City Hall, they get to park at a meter and hope they can get in and out before the meter expires.
Right.
I want parking for our residents. We need convenient parking for our employees. We need the structure to work out. It'd be nice to have, you know, commercial areas surrounding and things like that, and somewhere to go get a bite to eat. So there are a lot of pieces to this that I think are important. State Journal building is one of 4, as is the Lake Trust building is one of 4. I believe the old Capitol Commons building on Grand, and then the Barry Amos space on Grand. Those are the 4 proposals.
All right, and finally the Red Cedar project. This dragged on. I mean, they announced this back, I think, in 13.
Yeah.
And come the end of 18, when, you know, of course, I'm sure Mayor Bernero, if he could have gotten this done in his time, really would have wanted to. You got it done very quickly. Of course, you inherited a lot of the progress on it, but tell me about how you were able, within less than 2 months, to put this together.
We asked everyone to come to the table. We said, you've been working on this for 4 years. There are disagreements. I had people who wanted me to just rebid the whole project. So we said, we're 4 years down the road. We put a lot of city dollars and hours into this. You know, developers have put a lot of money into this. We said, let's get all to the table and see what the issues are. And it didn't turn out there were as many issues as we thought. There were some, and we kind of navigated them. I said, you know, this is what the city can live with. This is what we can't live with. And, you know, we went back and forth some, and our economic development folks went back and forth. You know, Bob Trezise and the LEAP team, as well as Brian McGrain and my economic development staff, they worked with the developers, and we got to a place where, I mean, I believe the city does very well in this deal. If it would be a great development with hotels, with housing, with parkland. It's actually more usable green space than we have now, and a retirement community, and all of that with the city not putting a dime at risk. The initial proposal you mentioned from 2003 had the city bonding for $40 million. The proposal that council is going to look at now has the developers bonding for $30-something million, and the city bonding for $10 million in public infrastructure, but all of that is repaid from the tax capture on the property. So any incremental taxes that come in on that property, which includes not only our taxes, but state taxes, county taxes, everybody who is making increased tax dollars comes in to pay for that. If there's not enough to pay for it, the developers have to pay the city's share. There is not one tax dollar that's on the hook here. If we do nothing, there's no increased tax dollars. If we do this, you have increased property taxes that help to pay the bonds, plus you have city income tax, so the city is making money. Plus, we're going to have new hotels. It's going to be this tremendous entry to the city. When people get off 127, right now there's no entry to the city. Now you've got an entryway with development and growth. It's a good way to kind of attach us to East Lansing, as we've talked about the Michigan Avenue corridor. So I see it as a win. I see it as a win-win for the city, but this is the time for the public to comment. It's time for them to take a look at it and make some decisions. You know, I've already heard this week, announcing it this week, people saying, well, it's in the floodplain. Don't you see what water is there? Well, that's true, and that's why they're going to build what's called a plinth. It's like a stage that comes up over top. Had this been built and this same flood happened, wouldn't touch the buildings because the plinth rises above the floodwaters. So we've got that covered. So I think that a lot of the questions have been answered, but the residents need to hear our answers and they need to bring their own questions and hear answers, and that's what the public process is for. It goes on file now, and there'll be plenty of time for council to review it. Yeah, the way it'll be 30 days, but then it's actually a little more than that because you're lining up with city council meetings. So there will be time for residents to review it and ask their questions, and council members to ask their questions.
Is city council equally as excited about this, do you think?
We worked on it, and when we got to the end, and the developers immediately wanted it to be released, we kind of dotted the I's and crossed the T's, and we sent the proposed development agreement to council last week, so they could have it and look through it before the presentation. The presentation was on Monday, so we'll see. I've had some conversations with council members. In Lansing, we have many people who look forward to growth. We have some people who really want to see no growth. We have people who want to see it stay green space, people who want to see it go back to a golf course. The citizens twice have voted to sell the land and convert it to development, so I'm confident that the residents are supportive. It's just a matter of what it is, what that development is. We could have, one complaint we'll get is we're selling it for $2.1 million plus the $40 million in bonding. It's probably worth more than that. So people will complain and say you could have gotten a lot more money just by selling it. But just by selling it, we don't know what the use would be. It could be anything. It could be anything. And I think having control and having an idea of what that use is going to be, knowing it's going to be a positive use to Lansing, I think that was worth quite a bit, especially when not a tax dollar is on the hook.
Well, that is first, and what we hope will, as I said, be a series of interviews with the Mayor of Lansing, Andy Schor. I want to thank you for being here and willing to do this. And I want to once again thank our partner in this, Message Makers in Old Town. Until next time, I'm Berl Schwartz from City Pulse. Thanks for watching.